Well, hello, I'm Katy Kleitz, and this is my garden, Glen Luce Garden in Stowe, Massachusetts, where I garden with my partner Iris Marcus. I'm going to show you a few of the things that are looking nice in my garden right now. But before I do that, I'll just mention that I'm standing in what is really the central spot, and from this 7 paths go out, so it's a garden of choice. There isn't one path that takes you through everything, but you can make a choice and go any way you want. So I think I will begin by going down to see a few roses, because it's near the end of June and this is rose season. And you'll probably see a few dead roses as well, because they have already bloomed, but there are plenty of beautiful roses in bloom right now. Let's see. Well, I guess we can go down here. Well, this is one of my all-time favorite roses. Its name is Tausendschön, which means 1,000 beauties. And I think you can see that it has more than 1,000 beauties right now. It's a rambling rose. And this year, because it was growing so strongly, I was able to train it over this arch, and inside there's a seat that you can sit in the midst of the roses. And while we're down here in this part of the garden, I'll show you a native azalea. Which right now is not only in full bloom, but it's incredibly fragrant. There are a few native rhododendrons with the big leaves, but this is genuinely a native azalea, and it's deciduous. It loses all its leaves, but nothing could be more beautiful or smell more wonderful than this when it's in full bloom like this. And while we're here, I'll mention right up there those leaves that look very tropical, but that is a magnolia. It's a Magnolia macrophylla, which means big leaf magnolia, and it has blossoms, big white blossoms that are like a dinner plate. Well, I guess we can go on this way. This is a favorite quiet place in my garden, and I have some garden seats here. Most of these are woodland peonies that have already bloomed, beautiful simple white blooms, and the taller ones are woodland peonies that have simple pale pink blooms. These wonderful trees are Acer griseum, paper bark maple, and you can see the wonderful bark that they have on these trees. So I have a grove of them here, and I do love to come and sit. Well, I don't know. You better go this way. Can you smell this as you go by? Yeah. I tried to keep part of my garden wild, and as it was when we moved here. And this is some of the wild part, which I think is interesting because there are basically 3 plants here that came on their own. There's a kind of cornice, a kind of shrubby dogwood. And this, which now is little but it grows big, is sambucus. It's elder and it's just beautiful. And the 3rd wild thing that grows here is a wild honeysuckle, bush honeysuckle. I think it's Linicera mauricii. And then there's a path through the wilderness. Part of a garden is change. And this last winter, we had some rather harsh storms, and a giant tree fell here, which was part of my wild garden. But as a result of cleaning up everything that was destroyed, Iris has now made a new path, and I've planted some new plants, and it's a new area we can enjoy. So this is a sea of Ligularia, which has beautiful golden blooms later in the season. I try to keep golden things down here. Because I grow so many roses, the oranges and yellows, golden yellows, don't necessarily go well with them. So I keep a lot of golden things down here. That's a golden weeping beech over there. And this tall tree is a magnolia called Hot Flash, and it has beautiful yellow blossoms that have finished.
Growing on the tree?
That is a fungus, and funguses tend to grow where there's been some disruption in the bark, which you can see has happened there. So they grow into the tree as well as out, and are not necessarily a good sign for the tree. However, that tree seems like it's surviving that. Here's the pond. Right now, a lovely thing is blooming, something that was here in the garden, although not here, but near the house when we moved in. It's Lysimachia numularia, creeping jenny, and it's blooming. Beautiful yellow, little yellow flowers by the pond. The pond itself is covered with green duckweed, which some people don't like, but I like it. And apparently the only way you could get rid of it anyway would be to have a duck. They do eat it, I understand. This tree, which also has interesting bark, is called Heptacodium, or Seven Suns tree. And, well, I have a lot of favorites, but this is yet another favorite of mine. It blooms in the fall and is very fragrant, and what more could you want?
Oh, hi, I'm Iris Marcus.
Yes.
I live here too. And welcome to our garden. Hope you guys enjoy it. It's labor of love, I should just say. I know that's a phrase used all the time, but it really is. And it's good workout, you know. But Katie's a gardener. I'm the schlepper. That's how we do it. It's all good.
Well, you haven't seen Iris's vegetable garden yet.
Yes. My vegetable garden.
Because
I like
it's
to eat
nice.
what I grow. It's all good. All right, you guys have a great day.
Okay, well, one last thing I'll point out by the pond, although it's not that easy to see, but I'm very happy that this year this rose is blooming. It's a swamp rose, and we're right down near wetlands here, so a swamp rose is the right thing for us. It used to bloom more, but now we have a bunch of trees that I have planted, and so it doesn't bloom as much, but this year, there it is. Beautiful, delicate flowers. We're back near the yellow golden area, and I'll just mention that this is a spirea, a golden leaved spirea, and the leaves, they are green, but they're golden green, and it also has these beautiful white flowers that the bees are loving right now. So now we're coming up on more roses. This is my rose Pergola. And of course the roses mostly bloom on the outside. The roses on my right have not bloomed yet. Well, actually there are a few that have, but most of them haven't. But the ones on this side, the sunny side, are very happy. This is a rose called Veilchenblau, which means violet blue. And this beautiful pink rose with a white center is called American Pillar. I first saw that in a public garden in France, and I thought, well, how can they grow American Pillar and I don't have it? And it is a wonderful rose. And coming down here, this is Baltimore Bell. Beautiful pale pink, very fragrant flowers. And clematis is growing all over it. The clematis Betty Corning, which has little bell-shaped hanging flowers growing all over, as I say, all over the Baltimore Bell. So I'll just mention that over there, that's the wild area again. What's in bloom is actually the sambucus, the elder that I mentioned before. And until the giant tree fell down crushing things, it never had enough sun to bloom. So that's the silver lining of that disaster. And these are all roses. Most of them have bloomed already, but they are beautiful still. So here's another Betty Corning clematis. And up here, a clematis violacea plena. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Most of it has finished blooming, but there's a striped rose here. And it's a very, very old rose, probably from the Middle Ages at least. It's the Rosa gallica, and it's called Rosa Mundi, which means Rose of the World. And it is one of my favorites. And you just see a couple of blooms there, but actually it's all throughout here. It just has mostly finished blooming by now. So another area that I will not take you in, because it wasn't planned to be a wilderness, but it was devastated by this storm. Back in here, I have a lot of beautiful things growing, but I have to clean it out because we had to take down 11 trunks of arborvitae in there, and it has not recovered. So here is a rose. I don't know if you can see this. It has giant red thorns and beautiful, delicate pink flowers when it does bloom. But I like to grow different things. So here's another favorite of mine. This is a shrub called Zenobia, and it has beautiful blue-gray leaves and these little bells that smell like honey. So before we get to Iris's vegetable garden, you can't see it very well right now, but this is probably my favorite rose. It's past its peak. It's a damask rose called Isfahan, and this is the rose that there were fields and fields of, and they harvest the petals and make attar of rose, and the base for many perfumes is from this rose. And now this is Iris's beautiful vegetable garden. And I will not be able to tell you what all the plants are, but you can see that they are wonderful. Although one story I will tell you is that there's kale here, and one of our dogs loves kale. So when we eat in the screen porch, we'll hear this crunching and look out, and there's the dog eating the kale. So you can see Swiss chard, lettuces, tomatoes, squash. Iris has everything in this small area. And back there, the part that I'm responsible for, there's some honeysuckle and a deutzia that's blooming. Hello. Hi.
We're half of the crowd here.
Oh, good, good.
Oh, nice and lush. I like the structure. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Are you in the middle of taping?
Yeah, so I was going to point out that from here you really do see all those roses.
This way. He's everything. So I thought that was going to. Oh, that's a rain chain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. So instead of a pipe. Yeah, well, instead of it disperses the rain so it comes out gently. Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
Good. Hi. It's true.
You
Well,
are the
one of
gardener?
them, but I'm not the vegetable garden. Iris does that.
Well,
Wow.
you do well with the
It's
flowers.
Thank you.
Just
Just
gorgeous.
amazing. Look at this sage.
Well, I'm happy right now with those roses blooming over there.
That's gorgeous.
Good way to put a hose up instead of having it all over the ground to fall over. How do you like this?
What do you use for fertilizer?
This?
Do you use compost?
Well, the only thing I use is in the spring, the roses and peonies get composted cow manure, and that's all.
Yeah.
But we have very rich soil here.
Oh, wow.
You know, we're down next to the wetlands.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's really rich.
Yeah.
And it was never cultivated or anything, so it just stayed
it's
rich.
all there.
It's all there.
Open up some wine, you guys can have some lemonade or tea, iced tea.
Hello, hi. Good, how are you?
So much for sharing.
So it allowed me to have a full basement and then we could get all our gardening supplies and tools in there. But above it is my studio. Why don't you guys come in, we'll get a drink and then we can all relax and sit.
And we can walk around. So one more rose, Darlow's Enigma, which has this wonderful scent. Most of the roses I grow are what are called old garden roses, and they're from the 19th century or earlier. And when I say they're from then, that means that they've been grafted. They're not species, so they don't come true from seed, but they've been grafted from the original ones. So they really do have a direct genetic connection to these old roses. Anyway, most of them only bloom once. And considering how many blossoms there are, I think that's wonderful. They don't need to have 1,000 blossoms several times a year. But this one is a repeat bloomer. So then, so this is one of my favorite views of the garden. There's this swamp rose, and it's just very calm and beautiful. And there are individual plants that I could talk about forever, but that's the basic layout. When Iris and I moved in, this whole lower part of the garden was a field of Japanese bamboo. And the upper part had been closed in with arborvitae, most of which had to be taken down to put in a septic system. And that was 1992. So the garden really started after that. And it's been here for 25, 26 years now. And there are only 1 or 2 plants that were here before, and really none of the shrubs. So I had the great pleasure of getting to plant it all myself. The house is old. This is Iris's studio, which she had built. But the house itself is 1871. And so I tried to keep some idea of an old-fashioned garden. Certainly not contemporary and modern, but I would anyway. Anyone who wants to see it can request to come see it. You know, it's not open otherwise, except for specific things. It's been open for quite a few garden tours, and the Garden Conservancy in particular. But these days it's open by appointment, basically. I don't have a website, no, but Iris does, but it's not a gardening website. Iris Lee Marcus, she's a decorative painter, and she does have a website. And you can always get in touch with her through that.